All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us on this exciting episode of the Boring AI Show, where we're going to be dealing with and diving into employee experience and AI and how that, AI can work with the employee experience and supercharge it or create risks. And so we are very excited to be joined today by Beth White, the founder and CEO of MeBeBot, and Bennett Sung, the Bennett Chief Marketing Officer. What's the right way to introduce you here?
Fractional Chief Marketing Officer.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Well,
and guru.
And so, as always, Tally is joining us today. And Tally, thanks for joining us.
Of course. Sorry for the mishap there in the beginning.
Oh, good. So let's as we normally do, let's kick off with some news. Tally, what's happening out there in the world of AI?
Perfect. So there's a lot. I feel like this week there's been quite a bit of AI news, but one that I think is at least really exciting to me came out yesterday by the New York Times. It's called a Silicon Valley group, super group is coming together to create an AI device. And again, I'll make sure to link this after the show. But essentially, it shows that the OpenAI's Sam Altman and the former Apple designer Johnny Ive are teaming up to develop a device that could replace the smartphone, backed by SoftBank's investment. So again, a lot of AI-related news this week, but I think this really speaks to the exciting possibilities that AI is opening for innovators. I know for me, this really makes me think of when the first iPhone or smartphone with a touchscreen was released and just how crazy different that was. I think it blew a lot of people's minds. And this project, I have a feeling, is going to end up doing the same, it sounds like. So this project is described as preliminary, but essentially it would develop a device that would succeed the smartphone and deliver the benefits of AI in a new form, unconstrained by the rectangular screen. So really something extremely different than what we're used to seeing. Further in the piece, they talk about, really think ambient computing. So rather than typing or taking pictures on a device, imagine a device that's like a pendant or glasses or some sort of simple device that could process the world in real time and process images, using a smart virtual agent to kind of assist you through that method, which is really interesting. So again, Sam Altman, he's invested in a lot of kind of similar companies, but one reason he may want to pursue his own in this is to avoid dependencies on existing companies for distribution. But like I said, it's really in the early stages. I just think this is exciting to show the potential innovations and how much AI really is going to impact our world in the near future. So I thought that was really exciting, and I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on this.
Yeah. Beth and Bennett, would you guys wear an Alexa necklace that can just be listening to everything you talk about with everyone and interpret it?
Yeah, is that how you're viewing it, Tim, as a necklace? I mean, I like it if it's a bling and a necklace. That sounds like a lot of fun. The way I was essentially reading the news on it, I couldn't help but my brain went straight to the movie Minority Report, and I thought, I've got to go back in time and watch that movie again, because when it was describing glass and not a physical rectangular device, it really brought up a lot of imagery, but yet not really getting your hands around what it's going to really be like for the humane solution of the future. So I think that's what they're going to call it as a product name, humane.
Nice. Right. I mean, that's like when the Patriot Act came out, and it's like, come on, guys, y'all have read enough thrillers and sci-fi to know anything named like for patriotism. It usually has a sinister kind of overtone to it. That's just dystopian fiction 101.
Right, exactly.
So calling it humane does not sound good.
That was a big little warning bell for me. So,
Bennett, what do you think?
I think that it's it'll be very interesting to see and observe how this this device, operates. Is it going, obviously, I've seen the Google commercials. If you take a picture and all of a sudden Google will tell you how to do this and do that and everything about the picture. And so if I don't have to hit any more buttons, and if it can also prevent from, pocket dialing, that would be fantastic. That's usually my biggest concerns about phones. But nonetheless, considering my phone is in my pocket most of the time. But I think it's fascinating what the potential is going to be in terms of its interaction within the community and such, and is it going to help me win more Pokémon Go video games? So,
yeah, that's the value proposition. This will make you
my value proposition.
That's awesome. So, I come back to this with years ago, like 2016. I was at a conference. And it was a BPM conference, a business process management, and they were talking about communities of systems. And I thought that was a really interesting topic and kind of far-fetched at the time. But, as we get back, having these AI assistants, one of the things I think is really interesting is how are they going to work together? Like, how would this tool work with Siri? How would this tool work with Alexa? Because one of the things I love about Apple's HomeKit is it is a centralized place to work with all kinds of intelligent devices I have through my house. So, I think making sure that it's not built as a silo and built as part of an ecosystem, I think that's going to be a real critical part to all AI in the future. And so, Tally, what are your thoughts on the humane device?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of products have been released and failed. So there's no guarantee anything's going to be the revolutionary product. But to me, it's just exciting because I think it's been a while since we've seen, especially with personal devices, a huge shift in that area. I know, most of, at least my group, we still have iPhones or Androids and smartphones. So it's just exciting for me to think of these, new possibilities and ways in which our personal and professional world is likely going to pretty drastically shift in the next coming years, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree. Very related to this. Have you guys read Johnny Ive's book, Build? That is a phenomenally good book.
No, I have not, but I will add it to the major list of books that I still have not yet read this year that are coming out. So
the TBR.
Right. Maybe the Cliff Notes version here, Tim.
So somebody I was talking to recently is their list has gotten so long. They're like, well, you just get it on Audible and put it at 1.2 speed.
Oh, there you go.
Go through it. But in this book, the narrator speaks pretty fast, so I would not encourage that. But really good book that dives into his mentality and methodology around building products and how he approaches things. Eddie Jenkins at Mind Over Machines was the one who suggested it to me. Really wonderful book. He's a good one to get book recommendations from. So if y'all are following him on LinkedIn, you'll see he talks about all kinds of stuff he reads because he has a long commute, and so he's audio booking it as he's driving around. So,
yeah,
awesome. Well, you guys want to talk about employee experience? We want to move on?
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, before we go there, why don't you, Beth, tell us a little bit about who is MeBeBot?
Well, thanks to Tim. I know you've been on our, Ask MeBeBot Anything in the past, which was exciting to have you on to help us in the world navigate the world of AI and how companies are utilizing these technologies. And, where we stand at MeBeBot is we think a lot about the employee experience. I mean, there's a number of different types of ways that AI can be applied, of course, to the world of work. But if you think about what we've had happening in our our lives just in the past few years. We've all moved to working various locations. Some of us are back in office, some are still remote or going to continue hybrid. And you need technology that really connects employees, to their employer to really make the company successful. And so we at MeBeBot really think that what's been missing is, in talking about all the future of digital glass, it's really just a front door inside the ecosystem of a workplace, which becomes MeBeBot. We are that front door that greets employees. We help support their employee needs. We push communications, take feedback from pulse surveys, and we show data back to the business. And the reason we do all this at MeBeBot is we really believe in this concept of, if we're connecting ourselves in the world as consumers, why aren't we doing more inside the workplace to connect employees to all the different disparate data that's out there inside the walls of an organization? But frankly, it has a lot of its own challenges, just like, the world of consumer, products and AI technologies, where there's a huge lens. And I think we're going to hit on that a little bit here in the conversation on how do you do this in a secure way, within the walls of a business, to protect the intellectual property of the company, to protect the privacy of the employee, to make sure information is delivered in a compliant, consistent, accurate way. And so we think a lot about that at MeBeBot and how we're delivering our solution to our customers.
No, that's awesome. And you hit the core topic when it comes to AI. You were saying security in governance,
Right.
And so that was one thing in our writers' room meeting. We talked a lot about governance and security, and so I'd love to hear from you guys. Bennett, if you want to kick us off here, like what why can't the chatbot just say whatever it wants in the world of HR? It just make up stuff on the fly. I'm sure it's probably accurate. So tell us about governance.
I think HR in general has obviously a reputation of one of their major kind of DNAs is compliance, right? To protect the employees, to protect the company. And so really one of their, each individual within HR and across the business really are focused on, risk aversion. And there's a lot of legalese around a lot of information. So making sure that, when you talk about specific policies, whether it's an AI policy, whether it is a, PTO policy or, anything else around the employee handbook, so much of it is governed by the legal team. And so we have to continue to protect it because it's obviously, a big part of the communication requirements out to employees. Because the one thing employees don't want, at least I don't want, is I don't want to get misinformation. So a lot of what I'm, asking of, HR or my, the line manager, my supervisor is give me the accurate information, give me the accurate answers to my questions, and I think that is the big part of it. And so just having AI come up with an answer based upon a document, they may misinterpret certain types of legalese that have been rigorously reviewed and run through a various approval process. So I think within the workflow of how HR and the business operates, a big part of the requirements, at least currently, until we all continue to build trust in what content is being created from existing documents or other system data, is this process of going through going through some level of verification that these answers are correct before they get published to employees.
Yeah. Tally, Beth, what do you guys think?
Go ahead, Tally.
No, I think that's huge. I think Bennett hit the nail on the head in terms of making sure misinformation isn't spread, making sure we're confident with not only the information we're using, but that our teammates or employees are using, and we're feeling comfortable with where data is going and being stored. I think all of this is huge and relates to some of the major fears that I think a lot of employers and individuals have with, learning how to use AI in a really ethical and appropriate way that doesn't put people or organizations at risk. So I think, that's obviously a huge piece of it. And I don't think a solution is, don't use it. I think it's figuring out how to use it appropriately, because unfortunately, or fortunately, it's here. And based on the data that we have, whether you like it or not, odds are your employees are using it. So how can we coach people to use it in a way that's responsible, I think is where we need to put our focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we hear from our customers. We've been delivering a native AI solution from day one, leveraging, natural language processing, machine learning, frankly, before the era of generative AI just a year ago. And now we've had the ability to embed generative AI within our products so that our customers can take a sensitive document this is a great example. You've got an FMLA policy for, the US, and then you have one for California, right? And there are other states that have different laws around leave of absences related to medical, and types of leaves that are very critical to companies and their employees. And so if you leverage AI to use the generative AI to come up with an answer on, say, a 3 or 4 page document that has actually been reviewed by your legal team, that applies to the legal letter of the law of a particular state, and you're trying to deduce it down to a paragraph so it summarizes something for an employee, you have to be very careful with that content, because even one letter out of place or several letters out of place could really redefine how a policy is described to an employee. And frankly, what companies are worried about, because we sell into a lot of the HR, and those are our customers, as well as, IT teams, and it could result in a lawsuit, right, against the business. And so they're looking at how do we leverage the benefits of having the AI, especially a generative AI, help us get to more of a succinct answer. But we need to have human eyes review that, and we need to have them verify it to make sure that's the answer that people need to receive. And if it needs changes, they can make edits and lock it down so that they know that it is in sync with their governance and the compliance processes that the business is following, so that they can be comfortable embracing this technology without fear of repercussions, frankly, in the future.
Yeah. And that human in the loop, we get so enamored with AI as this magic box that can just do stuff. And a lot of times, and we see it, working with processor engineering, what is the value of the human in this process? And don't lose that, and this is a great example of that human is providing so much context that the AI system just doesn't have. So that human in the loop, for whatever the AI solution that you're working on, people in the listening crowd, keep your humans in mind. And don't forget, if you have a comment or question for us, throw it into the comments on the event and we'll pick it up. But Bennett, here you're chomping at the bit. What do you want to say?
No, so it's it happens. A good friend of mine, David Turetsky, who works at Salary.com, was commenting, because he and I have worked in HR for 20 plus years. He was referencing the whole notion is that HR operates in compliance mode always, right? And they are continuously, it's not just their own company policies that they have to keep in mind, but the reality is the complexity at the federal, state, and municipality level. So it is mission critical that humans are always in the loop, because those policies, at least those that are being governed outside of the company, are, those are continuously being modified and changed. And so you have to have someone who's very, very on top of things in terms of making sure that those are the right types of answers.
Right.
Exactly. And just to elaborate that, and Bennett's spot on, when we meet with our customers and other people that we're we're talking to, there's always this, curiosity about how AI can help them in their roles. But there is obviously, like every role across the business, a concern of what's this going to do to my job? Well, the idea, and I think what everybody's been talking about, is AI is going to help you. It augments you to do your best work. So if AI can help summarize something, that you need to just use that critical thinking that you have as a human being to help make it better. That's how this world's going to play out, with people and the technology working really symbiotically together. And the more we keep continuing to talk about this, the better, because I think people have to understand. And I think, frankly, having I call it the sandbox of the ChatGPT out there in the world for everyone to write a blog with, or to come up with an article or recipe for something that they wanted to make. People are realizing, yeah, this is pretty good, but you still need to get involved. And I think that was such a great light bulb moment that happened, in the culture of, the AI community, when, it spread to more of a mainstream effect, right? Mm-hmm. Of knowing that this is powerful and helpful. However, we still, as people, have a role and responsibility to continue to improve on, content. We continue to improve on the training of the AI, et cetera. And, last night, I had a pleasure of being at an event that was combining internal comms people with, internal HR people, and how delivering messaging to employees has changed with the usage of AI. And frankly, there was a time when a few months ago, I was part of an internal comms, webinar where there was a lot of fear about AI for people's jobs in that community, because they thought, wow, if this ChatGPT can write up content, then what's left for me? But I think there's become an aha moment where people realize that there's definitely this human in the loop aspect, and that embracing it is going to make them, frankly, better, more productive, be able to prove out the ROI of the results of what they're doing and the effect. So there's a tremendous benefits that everyone can achieve.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great segue to, I know the topic today is really employee experience, and I would love to hear, Bennett and Beth and Tim, ways in which you guys have used AI either in your personal or professional life, and how that's maybe impacted your employee experience, and what you're hearing out in the marketplace. I'd love to hear any use cases in terms of how AI has impacted some of the employees and organizations that you guys have worked with.
Go ahead, Bennett. I'll let you kick this off.
Sure. So, for my personally, as a marketer, I think, I'm a one-person machine. And what I have, while there is within the marketing profession quite a bit of fear, especially if you're a content developer, but the way I've looked at it is it's actually enabled me to offset all of the real kind of tactical work when you're putting together content. So when you think about the whole process of building a blog, you have to research keywords. You then have to go find subject matter experts. Then you have to write an outline. Then you have to write the content. Then you have to proof it and everything else. The reality is the most important part of, for example, writing a blog is going out there and interviewing and getting proprietary information from individuals. That, for me, is where I want to spend my energy, because that's where the content is becoming really special for the audience that I'm writing for. So in my world, I use a hybrid of ChatGPT, plus I also use a enterprise writing tool called writer.com. And it's just allowed me to spin up emails, spin up meta descriptions, there's so many little pieces of content that need to be written and such. So it's now allowed me to do a lot more without having to get somebody to help me out with it. So that's personally how, as a marketer, I'm beginning to be able to do a lot more without, not to use a cliche, doing more with less, but that's pretty much what it ends up happening to be. So.
Right. Yeah. And I'll tie into that as well from a marketing perspective, not work related. So kind of stepping out of that, it's a lot of people know, like, I like to write fiction. it is very different skill set to tell a story in fiction than it is to write an ad to advertise that fiction. And so leveraging tools like Jasper AI, that's a huge tool for me to say, okay, what are some ad copies for this content that I could use, and give me 10 options. And then further leveraging AI, when building out those ads in Meta, using the creative, their ads algorithms to select, well, what's the right content to apply to this viewer. And again, this isn't rocket surgery. This isn't like super experimental. There's 0 lines of code to do everything I just described. So I really think from a content generation, there's huge value there. And mind over machines, also huge value where we use it to help us understand content and what might not be written in that content. So we have our own large language model we use internally that we use to analyze documents like RFPs. And so it's a walled garden. It's private to us. This data doesn't go anywhere outside of the mind over machines data ecosystem. But we're using these large language models to say, what's not being said in this document that we need to see and address? And so a great example, we had a data migration project, and the theme around this was that you've done it before, which might sound like, well, of course they want to know that, but nowhere in the document was it ever spelled out like, hey, show us that you've done this before and you really, really know what you're doing and we're in good hands. But that's where the large language model is like a recurring theme is, trust and history of performance. And so we really wrote our RFP response to highlight those things, and we heard it directly from the client. We were the only ones to do that because we, instead of just diving in, we had to help her and analyze it. So, which are fun use cases.
Yeah, that's a fun one, Tim. And, I'm thinking of use cases of employee experience centric. For example, the world of people is really becoming more of how do you personalize the experience for employees with inside the company. And so there's not the one-to-many type of messaging and outreach and even learning and development programs and recruiting efforts and career pathing. It's becoming hyper-focused on individualizing that experience. And some of the AI solutions in the market today can really help companies do that. There's companies that are really great at writing job descriptions, leveraging AI so that you can do it in a very inclusive manner and have that really great lens to making sure you're not creating a job description with biases, and you make sure it has the lens toward the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts that you have with inside your company. There's learning and development tools that are perpetuating the concepts of not just micro trainings and learnings, but very individualized, right? Individualized to what people are requesting as far as mapping it to a career pathing tool as well. So the more you can kind of combine technologies from learning to getting people down a path to becoming, in and moving and growing into roles within inside their organization, I think that's incredibly exciting, because at the heart of it all is, employers, care about their people. They really do. And they know that their employees are a reflection of their brand and their customer experience. And most employees, the average tenure at companies is 2 to 3 years. And why? It's because a lot of times they're not getting matched to opportunities within inside the business. They don't know how to grow within the company. And so there's a lot of ways that companies are going and personalizing messaging to target that. We do some of that at MeBeBot as well. With our push messaging functionality, we can deliver a lot of targeted messages to employees within channels that can be hyper driven around either reminders or suggested, direction or a learning that may be applicable to an employee. So that is really the wave of what I see happening. And the more we can do that approach to really targeting individuals with inside a company, I think it's going to be a lot more impactful for the organization as a whole. And then personally, personally, I really like, I'll put a plug real quick out to a tool that I've been using for years called Beautiful AI. And it started when there weren't a lot of tools like this. But, you know, if you're not a great PowerPoint designer and you need to come up with lots of slide decks, you can leverage this tool. And now they've embedded some generative AI within Beautiful AI. So you can write a prompt description in text and it will actually produce some slides for you as a starting point. And or they have great templates that make you look like you're a much more professional presenter / designer than you are. So
yeah. Very awesome. I also a big fan of Beautiful AI. I think it is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
So very cool. Tally, how about you? What tools? I mean, you and I talk about this a bunch, but you know, for the population here,
a lot of it has just been experimentation. Obviously, I know at Minor Machines we use Jasper, which has been great for me personally, just because I am not the strongest writer. So that takes a lot of time for me to write any new content. So to be able to tell Jasper what I want and then edit from there just as a starting place to get me going has saved an insane amount of time for us to be able to generate a lot more content, which has been really, really helpful both internally and externally. I know we had fun recently developing, you know, we've been doing some internal trainings and I worked recently with, shout out to Molly at Minor Machines, who was playing around and experimented with, I believe it's Adobe Express's new, they have a feature that allows you to input an audio file and it'll take that audio file and essentially have a visual character that will voice over to make it sound like it's coming from that visual character. So it's a really easy way to just give some visual interest to any sort of audio based training modules. So that's been really fun to play around with as well. But again, it's just really been huge for any sort of content generation. So I highly recommend folks take a peek with what's out there because it's super helpful and really fun and interesting to use.
Yeah. And all of this is dependent on having the skills to know how to use this stuff and making sure people are familiar, like with what are these tools and what are approved and what's the policies, given that governance, you know, again, and you know, one of the things that we talk about often, with Minor Machines, where we give somebody like, okay, you now have access to this tool. Now, the very first thing we need to make sure you understand is you are accountable for anything that comes out of this system, and have that, that like talk, I feel like it's the talk you have with your kids about drugs. It's the talk you have with coworkers about AI. You are accountable for this. This is on you and your actions. So Bennett and Beth, what are you guys seeing from an upskilling, technical confidence growing? How are people handling that in the market?
Well, I think it is challenging right now. Frankly, if I'm being direct, I think people are behind on their learnings. I think if you haven't gotten out there and tried a few AI tools in your own time, and this is a moment in our lives where we're going to have to spend a little bit of those free time hours and dabble in a few solutions. But I think it's moving so fast that people can't keep up, and they're not quite sure even where to begin. And so it's a matter of, taking some use cases like Tim, you mentioned you like to write fiction. Bennett has some specific needs. So do you, Tolly, and just trying out a few technologies so that you can gain a bit of understanding of how this works. And then it takes you down a path, because then as soon as you play with ChatGPT, then you want to know more about prompt writing. And then you want to know more about how it's really kind of coming up and what it's really doing. And so you're starting to dig into the machine. And that's what we see, frankly, some of our customers doing is once they see how MeBeBot works, they get to go, well, wait a minute, how did it come up with that answer there? And being able to use the technology and have your hands on it is much easier to get that learning curve moving faster than just to, frankly, just live in the world of reading or yet ignoring, which there is a bit of that happening as well.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I look at my own, journey from a using generative AI tools. It was like, for me, it was Mid-Journey. Well, actually, technically, Night Cafe. So we're going way back, so long ago. I think it was like 2 years ago. But the images were crazy. Like what was coming out was like, twisted nightmare dream stuff. And, that's my art aesthetic. I love that kind of stuff. So, and then Mid-Journey shows up with Stable Diffusion and it's like, whoa, this is different. This is getting interesting. And then you start seeing tools like Runway and people making these really engaging videos with generative AI. And then it's 11 Labs and Murph AI for voiceovers that so it really does spiral up. And, with all that said, you have tools like ChatGPT, Jasper, Bard, Claude, pick your large language model of choice that really do help you in work as long as you are on the guardrails and you've set up the guardrails so that you're not just doing whatever. So,
yeah.
And that guardrail, man, I think from an employee perspective, playing with the tools, experimenting with the tools is really important. Growing your knowledge and AI literacy is really important. From a management perspective, you also need to be growing the AI literacy, but from a different perspective of how do we build the guardrails? What's the protections we need to have in place?
And frankly, Tim, you won't know those until you try. You've got to get in there and just see where it's headed, because that, it's kind of like how probably people started driving in cars. You had to get out there and try it before you could understand, like, where's the road begin and end, right? So, so I think that's just the challenge, is getting people to have ways to overcome the barrier. And, I know you're out there with a lot of people that are probably a little bit more, advanced in the world of AI. And we talk to people all day long that may have a little understanding, zero understanding, or just want to learn, which is great. And it is it's pretty disparate right now. There's people all over in their levels. And frankly, as much as companies want employees to learn about AI, I think that they haven't offered enough opportunities to get exposure to it within the business. And many times you think about where the role of the employer is. For a lot of people, they get their health benefits from them. They get the paycheck from them. They also at times expect to learn these types of things from them as well, right?
I love the analogy of a car. I think that's a great point, because obviously cars open up such a large world, and you're able to get from point A to point B and have so many more opportunities. But in order to get to the place where you can even drive, you need to make sure you're taking your driver's test, you're doing the research on how to drive a car, what are the rules and regulations, you're sitting with hopefully your manager or somebody who's a little bit more versed to kind of go through your first couple runs of driving together. So I think that's a great analogy here of how to kind of ease into the world of AI and make sure that you have that support and you're doing that background research to get to the point where you can then start driving.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else we want to talk about on this topic, or we want to move on to wins?
I think I'm good. I just, like I said, I think my last little bit would just encourage people to go out and try different types of things, even if it's just something for fun. If you really like to, cook, use it for recipes. If you really like to, build, create beautiful, PowerPoint presentations, and everyone seems to have to do that at some point. Try beautiful AI. So just get started.
Yeah. And you'll see some fascinating things. So if you're a runner, I know like Michael on the call here, he's a runner. And one of the things I always joke about is there was this example that was, ChatGPT was used to create a marathon training regimen. And like the day before the marathon, ChatGPT had the person running like twice the amount of miles as a marathon, with the logic being, well, you're taking it easy on that next day. You're all set to go. But the reality is the human body is not going to handle that very well. And so when you are playing with the tools like this, when you're asking it for a recipe and it comes up with something, you're like, ew, like who would eat that? Now you're seeing these are the guardrails. Like this is what can happen in your business. where like if it starts talking about a policy you don't have, it's hallucinating, it's making it up, and so I always like to say, we in tech we call it hallucinating. Where I come from, we call it bullshitting. That's really what it is, and just recognizing that's what we're talking about here. Okay, cool. Wins, Tally. What you got? What's the win this week?
So I think my win at least, it actually really aligns with what we were just talking about. I think that there's a lot of examples out there of ways in which AI can hallucinate or BS or lean into and exacerbate existing biases based on the data that it's fed. The example I have today, it kind of flips that on its head. So it was a Stanford article. It was titled, AI shows dermatology educational materials often lack darker skin tones. So this has been an issue in the recent years, wherein many medical textbooks or learning materials lack images of various skin conditions as they appear on darker skin tones, which obviously could lead to really dangerous, misdiagnosed or delayed diagnosed outcomes, which could impact, obviously, somebody's survival rate. So it has really dangerous implications for patients. So in this use case, Roxana Dijon co-authored a study introducing this skin tone analysis for representation in educational materials. She called it STAR-Ed for short, framework that uses machine learning to assess bias in skin tones in the frequently used medical training materials. So this is huge. She mentioned, she's not the first to do this. A lot of folks are manually going through these materials to try and integrate a wider range of skin tones to show what different medical conditions look like on a wider range of skin tones. But obviously this takes a lot of time. There's a lot of medical materials out there. So she's really using this tool, using machine learning that they've trained to detect this human bias throughout all of these medical journals and textbooks and things of that nature. So I just think this is a really cool example of ways to, instead of having AI enforce some of the bias, actually call out the bias, so that way we can then make different materials less biased in the long run. So I just thought this was a really interesting win and use case of showing ways that AI could be beneficial if it's used correctly. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I love that example. That's amazing.
Awesome. So from a win perspective, Beth and Bennett, we kind of sprung the win thing on you. Sorry, guys.
That's all right.
Any wins you'd like to share?
Well, on a daily basis, there's just so many exciting things going on that we're winning every day. We show up and we're building new technology, bringing it to, and having just people that are passionate, dedicated. That's such a huge honor and win to have on a team, for sure. But what also is a win is when we have customers who give us some amazing compliments and are super psyched to launch our solution within their companies. And so we have one customer in particular that's going live to a specific group next week. And just to get that general excitement of the team to see something they've all really collaborated on across the business to bring to light. I mean, it's fun. It's energizing. Yeah. It's something new and different. It frankly often is times where, HR gets to be cool. They get to bring an AI solution to employees, and HR was behind it. And especially if they're at a company with a lot of tech people, they're like, whoa, HR, all right, we see you, So, and when they get the support of the IT team and other folks, I mean, it's just, I think they get excited because it's different. I mean, everyone has been utilizing a lot of database systems for forever, and, things and tools that are hard to implement. And when they see that, wow, this is all accessible, I understand it, and I can actually do something like this, it really makes them feel good as people, right? Like they're achieving something with inside their business, and they and that's been very exciting because it's happening all week long. We've been having conversations leading up to it.
That's awesome. And all of us who've been in like huge, projects, and by that I mean just lots of team members trying to all row the same direction. Mm-hmm. When you all get there, it is awesome. It is so awesome. So cool. Excellent win. Thank you, Beth. Bennett, anything on your side?
Yeah, so, I'm a mentor with Techstars up here in Seattle. So, a big shout out. So right now we're kind of aligning these cohorts with mentors. And I'm just like, my mind is blown away at all of the different use cases that are popping up that I probably would have never thought about in solutions that are leveraging generative AI for doing everything from helping out with like advertising workflows to having a chef come in and cook for you every day, all the way through to, caregiver marketplace. So what I'm, this big win, and shout out to all the founders who are building these new companies with all of these very interesting applications. It's very inspiring to see the the early stage startup world just be so kind of really massively experimenting with anything and using the latest kind of waves of these macro technology kind of tailwinds. So I'm excited for the health of the early stage startup companies who are using AI to build a business.
Awesome. Very, very cool. These are great wins. So for my win this week is definitely around the Writers Guild. And what in the Writers Guild description around that AI can't be I believe the wording they use is like a originator of content. And so writers can use AI to create content, but the writer is who is accountable for it. That AI cannot just be like, we use this system to create this content. That is a very big thing, because what it leads to is there always needs to be a human accountable for the AI's work. That the AI cannot be like the source. And so while we look at that and say, oh, the writer's strike, that's important. But when you start thinking about the ripple effect in society and in business of like, well, why'd you make that decision? Well, the AI said to do it. Oh, yeah, that's not an answer. You can't do that because the AI couldn't originate. So very fascinating to me. And from my perspective, the win about this is we are taking the first steps of clarifying AI's role in society along with humans. That's huge. So very excited about it. But,
that's cool.
All right. We're almost at time. Bennett, Beth, thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Any parting things to share, or anything that you guys just want to kind of say on employee experience as we go out the door?
I don't know, Bennett, if you want to give a preview to some announcements next week, or how you feeling about that?
I'll let you do that.
Yeah, I earlier described, we have a press release coming out next week. So you all are getting the sneak preview to that, where we're announcing our digital employee experience AI platform that is using embedded, generative AI within our solution to, again, provide another opportunity for our customers to leverage existing content they have to deliver accurate answers to employees with a verified approach. So just getting to market, like the concept that there's a lot of buzz and noise about generative AI and what does it mean, but there are ways that you can embrace it today within the enterprise and feel good about it. And getting education and messaging out there has been one of our kind of key drivers from day one. So that's kind of an exciting announcement that you all are privy to in advance.
Awesome. Very exciting. So
very exciting.
Super looking forward to this, guys. So thank you again for joining us today. Thank you to Beth, Bennett. You guys have been really great. Thanks to MeBeBot and all that you guys are doing in the community. Mind Over Machines, thanks for sponsoring.
Yes, thank you.
Time here. And Tally, as always, thank you for keeping us on time.
Yes, Tally, Tim, thanks for inviting us. We always have fun chatting with you guys.
All right, everybody have a wonderful day, and we will talk to you. Oh, next week. Actually, we'll talk to you next week. So I almost forgot. Due to scheduling things, we will have another Boring AI show next Friday. So keep an eye on LinkedIn. We'll be sharing it here shortly, and we'll see you all there talking about healthcare. So healthcare and AI.
Oh, that's great. Good topic.
Awesome.
That is a very relevant.
Important. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.